All right, well, thank you so very much, folks, for joining us again. I know it's been a long time since we've had one of these presentations, so thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us again, since we have some amazing news to partake with everybody. So today is October 7th for our weekly financial meeting. If you haven't been getting the weekly updates, I can definitely update your email or add someone else to the email list. So feel free to shoot me that information if you want to update your information. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you hover at the center of your screen near the bottom, you'll see a toolbar kind of pop up, and that will have three icons there in the middle: a microphone, a phone type icon, and the camera. So feel free to take the moment to stop the camera if you don't want to be part of the presentation. It is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our website. So if for any reason you'd rather not have your camera view shot be part of that recording, go ahead and turn off the camera. And please take the moment to mute your microphone too, so whatever background noise you have going on is going to get picked up by the recording as well. So again, being recorded, this is your warning to that. It will be posted on the internet on the Ground Ambulance website. The chat box is also part of the recording as well too. So any questions that you have that you post in the chat will be read aloud and will be part of the recording as well. So for the presenters here, feel free to mute yourself while you are not presenting. And for all the attendees, mute yourselves while you're not asking any questions. Ms. Shelley will be presenting our materials for us. And at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions, press *6 to unmute yourself. So for those of you that know me, I am Catherine Ruiz. I am the ambulance rates analyst for the Bureau of EMS and Trauma. You have my contact information there on the agenda. If you have any follow-up questions or any of the clarifications that I don't get to during the meeting or any additional items that come to pass, do not hesitate to give me a ring or shoot me an email. Is if your agency is interested in administering flu vaccines, the county has received several vaccines for the flu that can be distributed to your area. So of course that's county specific on where it is that you are located. So we have the different county department contact information there for you. So feel free to reach out to them if you are interested in having your provider or your location provide those flu vaccines to our community. The second item is the COVID-19 vaccines, which has been getting a lot of attention from people, a lot of questions we've been getting about interest or clarifications. So if your agency is interested in possibly administering COVID-19 vaccines once they are available, of course, you'll want to input your information to that pandemic provider onboarding site. Now, obviously, it says right now that it is temporarily closed for maintenance. So any information that you type in is not going to be recorded. So if you have interest that you would like to supply, feel free to give me a heads up, and I can tell you when that is finally open so that you can enter that information. So there's no absolute demand that you do that, but if for people who have been reaching out to me, who have questions and want to get clarifications on it, you can definitely input your information to express that you are interested. And as I always tell my spouse, just because I say I'm interested in something doesn't mean I'm married to it. I might say I want another cat, but that doesn't mean we're going to get another cat. So if you say you're interested in this, it doesn't mean you absolutely are married to the idea and you have to do it once it becomes available. So feel free to take some time to read over it before you express that interest, see what types of data and requirements are there. After reading through it, it might come to pass that it might not be something that you are willing to or even able to do. So please take some time to review that. If you have any questions about that as well too, I will try to answer as best I can or refer you to someone who will be able to give you better answers regarding that form. All right, moving on, the next thing. The Arizona Partnership for Immunization, TAPI, is offering free training for emergency vaccination, mass vaccination for firefighters, first responders, emergency response planners, etc. So if you are interested in getting some of that free training, it's all online. Feel free to register online and get that started. Additional trainings will be available as we get more guidelines regarding the COVID-19 vaccine, so that will be updated as that information becomes available, since this is an ever-changing topic. And last but not least, the ARCR. I'm sure if many of you have noticed that you haven't gotten the annual email that you normally get from me, the very saying, hey, your ambulance revenue and cost report is going to be due soon, so these are things that you should be considering. And the reason being for that is because of the rule being waived regarding the deadlines for the ARCR. We always, as a bureau, provide extensions as providers require, but due to the pandemic, obviously that extension was automatically given. I have received several ARCRs from persons who apparently were able to get them done, which is awesome. If you're able to get it done, send it to me, marvelous. If you need more time because of pandemic, because obviously that waiver is here to, is gonna be expiring, I think it might have already. Feel free to shoot me an email saying, hey, I just need more time, given the nature of the world as it is, totally understandable. But one thing that I definitely want to communicate is that a lot of the providers have received funding due to said pandemic because of COVID-19, whether or not that's federal funding, whether or not that's state funding, whether or not that's funding from a private entity, whatever the case might be, or whether or not you're getting funding from, say, the community that's earmarked for just COVID-19 purpose. Now, the reason why we have this finance assistance directive on the website is to account for said funding. The Bureau understands that certain funding that's received by the providers is not for always. It's not absolute. It's not something that is going to happen annually, year after year. And given the pandemic and the funding that you're receiving, we're going into this with the understanding that this funding that you're getting needs to be separated from the normal operating funding that you receive. So that is the purpose behind this financial assistance. It's definitely not for the Bureau to say, oh, you got this, and so because of that, you don't need anything else. Absolutely not. The Bureau gets that this funding is only because of said pandemic. If it hadn't been happening, no one would be getting this additional funding. So this is just a guide for how to account for that funding separate, so that if and when we're evaluating any other applications or rate increases or any other evaluations happening regarding your rates, we realize and know and see that funding is being separate from your normal routine funding. So that's just want to be clear about that. So that's available on the Ground Ambulance website. So feel free to check that out if you haven't already. It's under the heading Additional Resources there, and that's the ARCR Directive COVID-19 Financial Assistance. So check that out if you haven't already. If you haven't filled out the ARCR, again, that's not required as of right now, given the nature of everything that's happening. If you have it, great. If not, that's fine. Feel free to reach out to me for an extension if necessary. Now, Paul had some information to provide to us, Paul Pedersen of Arizona Ambulance of Douglas, regarding the Phase 3 distribution from Health and Human Services. Unfortunately, he was called away due to a last-minute personal issue that came to pass, and Ed graciously offered to take in and present Paul's information. So we're going to leave Paul's information there on the agenda, because if there's any other additional clarifications regarding his presentation items, he would be the best contact for that. So we're going to leave that there, but Ed was kind enough to agree to present this, so you didn't have to listen to me talking the entire time. So thank you, Ed Giamar, Ed Armiro, if you could take it away for us. Deeply appreciate it.
Okay, if you can't hear me yet. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. The first, under the presentation, the format that Paul put in there, A is the notice about the Phase 3 distribution of 20 billion for healthcare providers. This is a continuation of Phase 1, Phase 2, and this is the current Phase 3. If you notice, there's a space right there where it says register here to see a webinar presentation hosted on October 15th. That's to register for that particular item. However, the application period is from October 5th to November 6th. Okay. Those who have not received Health and Human Services funds should apply as soon as possible. Those who have previously received Health and Human Services funds must apply as soon as possible, but no later than November 1st. Human Health and Services goal is for all providers to receive 2% of 2019 patient revenue between all three distributions. If funds are left over, the 2% projecting could increase, not would increase. A possible advantage to apply later rather than earlier is for those who have received funding previously. They may be able to get into that additional funding if everybody doesn't apply. However, that's kind of tricky. You might want to still go ahead and get it in as soon as you can. Phase 3 distribution estimated to be received in late November. That's getting everything in on time. Application is simple, straightforward, must be submitted via the provider portal. And if you look at that on your agenda, that little clicker says provider portal, that's where you'd go into it. Private providers will need to submit last tax return. Public providers will need to submit last audited financials. Complete information on how to apply and eligibility is right there where we have here. Just need to go in there, and this is how to attest to the payment, and gives you all the information. Phase 3 facts are available online, and if you see that click on the Phase 3, it goes to all the facts that you can ask, that you may have questions on, and so on. And basically, we just have to make sure we meet the application period between October 5th and November 6th, and make sure you understand that you should apply if you've received funds previously by November 1st.
Thank you so much, Ed. A couple things just to kind of reiterate what Ed was saying. If you have not previously received a distribution from Health and Human Services, you're going to want to put in your application ASAP, like soon. The application did open 2 days ago, and you're going to want to get started on that. The application itself is fairly straightforward. If you could click on the application hyperlink there, Shelley, I'd appreciate it. It's really, really, so there's really not a lot to go on regarding that. So that's the good news about that. So definitely get started on that if you have not received a distribution before. Now, the reason why it's possible to get more funding if you apply later, as was communicated to me, was that Health and Human Services is projecting to give you that 2% of your revenue from last year. But if a portion of that $20 billion is left over after they service everyone who submits applications right now. So say it's November 1st, they've submitted all the funding to all the necessary persons who applied, but there's a bit left over. It's possible that instead of getting 2%, you might get 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, whatever the case might be. At least that's the possibility that's been communicated. So that's up to you as to whether or not you would rather wait to see if you might get more funding versus get your application in right away so that you don't miss out at all. So that's a you decision with your organization to decide what's best for you folks to do regarding that. But I can't emphasize it enough. If you have not received any distributions from HHS, you want to get that in like yesterday. Take the time to put it together. Take the time to submit your information. Now, we've gone over the private providers needing to submit tax returns, public providers needing to submit their last submitted audited financials. The ARCR does not count because that's not audited. If you are a not-profit, you're going to need to submit your tax return as well. That's going to be what you submit because you still submit tax returns. So just keep that in mind to get that information together if you haven't already and you don't have it handy. Take the time to request that so that you can get it in as soon as possible. And the last bit of information that Paul communicated to me this morning was that this has been communicated as being the last amount of money that's going to be distributed. And it's been communicated to AAA that this is the last amount. And obviously that AAA is going to try to see if more funding and support can be provided, but there's no guarantee. So as Paul communicated, advocacy is best. If you're part of that community, that's what Paul has communicated, and I would recommend getting in touch with Paul to see what he means by that, since again, I'm just relaying what Paul communicated. Regarding this is let me know if you submit and everything, what that application process is like. Please let me know whatever hurdles that you might come into contact with and how those hurdles were remedied, so that I can communicate that information to any other providers who might run into the same issues, so that they can get what they need as well too without any issue. Just the closing remarks that I would have is if you haven't signed up already, Battelle is still offering the decontamination of masks for free through November. It's pretty close to the end of that contract being for free. I have contacted our contact with Battelle to see if that contract has been renewed, with the possibility that you folks would be eligible for larger periods of time for that free decontamination. So I will relay that as I know it. The ADHS, EMS, and 911 resources is constantly being updated. We still have the COVID pages in Spanish. If you still have COVID questions that are COVID specific, feel free to email those to the email that's there on your agenda. And again, the free emergency mass vaccination trainings, please share that with your network. See if anyone feels that would have any value to you. Perhaps even if it's just for continuing education hours, perhaps it's something that would be helpful in that regard. I don't know, but it might be helpful to you. Please check it out. And if it is helpful, please let me know. Again, this feedback is helpful to me so that I know what to relate to other people if you take the time to look over it. And with Health and Human Services, again, please take care of this and apply ASAP so that you get the money ASAP. Do have a question in the chat box, which was regarding the supplemental funding from the ARCR. So if you get grants, is that something that would need to be reported on the ARCR? And the answer is yes, if it's something that is used for the the ambulance program. So some providers, of course, are fire and EMS. So if you get a grant that is a fire and EMS grant, the same thing is with a lot of the shared expenses with fire and EMS. You would need to decide what allocation of that grant funding is EMS specific. Is it half? Is it 80-20%? Is it 75-25? Is it just 50-50? And just put like a little notation to that remark regarding it on your ARCRs. You can even say, it's like, this is the entire amount for the grant, but we are allocating it at 80-20, so this 80% is the amount, or this 20% is the amount that we are flagging as being EMS specific for the entire grant. So if you get any funding like that, please feel free to allocate whatever the amount is that needs to be allocated on the ARCR. If it's EMS specific, then obviously that needs to be reported on the ARCR and flag it as being the COVID-19. That's something that we're definitely trying to flag proactively, so that when it comes time to actually evaluate your funding, it's not counted as something that is an all the time funding, something that is basic that you get all the time, because obviously we all know that's not true. So if you have any other questions, concerns, feel free to email me. If you have any questions about the flu vaccines or the COVID-19 mass vaccination campaign, again, you don't have to be married to it if you just express interest or express the desire to get more information. So feel free to reach out to me regarding that, and I'll let you know once that is open. So thank you so much, Ms. Armijo. Thank you so much, Shelley. If you have any questions, feel free to *6 and unmute yourself, or hit us up in the chat box. I'll give it a few minutes. Any questions? I guess that's a no. Okay, well, thank you so very much for your time. We'll keep you updated as things become available to us. Feel free to reach out to Paul or myself if you have any other questions. So thank you so very much.